webinar today. Again, my name is Matthew and I will be your host. Before I move forward with the webinar, I just want to make sure that there are no connectivity issues. Can everyone please raise their hands if they can both hear my voice as well as see my screen up here? Okay, awesome. And if at any point you guys are having any connectivity issues, again, either with my voice or the screen itself, please write in and let me know, and I will do my best to make sure that I can adjust anything on my end. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. So up on the screen right now, you guys see our webinar series and everything that we cover throughout the week. So today is going to be payroll. Mondays, we have the Getting Started webinar, which covers the general navigation of ServiceTitan, essentially. For tomorrow's webinar, we will be covering lead flipping and estimate conversion. Thursdays will be memberships and recurring services. And Friday, of course, will be our mobile webinars. So if you guys haven't registered for the following or upcoming webinars for this week, please go ahead and do so. Here's a list of some of the objectives you guys can hope to get out of today's webinar. I'll just leave this up for a quick minute while I get set up on my end. Okay, and let's go ahead and hop right into ServiceTitan here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do when speaking about payroll, we're going to want to go into our settings. This is where we go ahead and configure all of our payroll settings as well as our commissions. So first one we're going to want to take a look at is going to be our technicians here. Let's just go ahead and click on Adam as an example. So what we're going to want to access once we get into Adam's technician page is access the payroll tab we have here for that specific technician. Okay, so let's just go over some of these fields here and let me just break it down for you guys. So up first we have the type. So is the technician going to be on a commission base or are they going to be on an hourly base? There is a way, of course, to pay out your technicians both on an hourly base and a commission base. Essentially, what you would need to do in that case, after configuring all of the settings, you would essentially need to run 2 reports simultaneously to get all those numbers and to make sure you guys are getting all the accurate reporting. So we'll go over that towards the end of the webinar, but just so you guys know, we're going to be covering the payroll detail report. So that's essentially going to be used to pay out the technician on a commission base. And then we also have the technician timesheet summary, which would essentially be used to pay the technician out on an hourly basis. So if you're going to pay them on both hourly and commission, you would, again, run both of those reports simultaneously. Second field we have here is going to be the commission rate, so the commission percentage for jobs. And then we have what's called the sold by rate, so commission percentage when assigned as the sold by in the job edit page. So let me just quickly tangent off on that, and I'll show you guys an example job here, and where you can actually go to locate the sold by field. And I also believe we do have a sold by report as well, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, let's go click into Bob's job here. And to access the sold by field, what we're going to want to do is click into the edit pencil on the upper right hand corner of the job page itself. And then if we scroll down, we'll see a section marked as sold by. This is where we'll go ahead and select the technician we'd like to get credit as the sold by technician for that job. And again, we can also go ahead and configure the percentage for their payroll here. So the commission percentage when assigned as the sold by in the job edit page. Next up, we have the default adjustment rate. So this is going to be an optional field. If you're using the tech specific bonus on a task, when that task is sold, the default adjustment rate will be used to determine the bonus commission percentage. We'll cover the services in just a moment here as well. So keep the default adjustment rate in the back of your mind. Next up, we have the hourly rate. So essentially the base pay for that technician. Then we have what's called a burden rate. So labor burden is a calculation of a technician's hourly rate, including other costs associated with their employment. So things like hourly wage, payroll taxes, average fuel cost, insurance, benefits, and things of that nature. And lastly, on the technician's payroll settings, we have what are called range bonuses. So again, this is an optional field. You can set a range bonus for your tech based on how much they sell over a given week. So as you can see here, for Adam, we've set it up in such a way where if he sells anything between $100 and just under $1,000, he will get a 10% bonus. If he sells anything from $1,000 to $2,000, he'll get 3% bonus, and anything from $2,000 to $5,000 is going to be a 2% bonus. And you can add as many range bonuses as you'd like, so you can get as specific as you'd like with this. And to delete it, you would just click into this little trash bin here. Just go ahead and save that information. Okay. Next up, what we're going to want to look at when configuring our payroll and our commission is going to be through our business units. So let's scroll down into the operations section here. I'm going to select business units. And we can just go ahead and select the first one as an example. Again, we're going to want to access the payroll tab here. So the first field is going to be the seller percentage fee. It can be activated for custom payroll configurations. When enabled, the tech on the job will get docked for having another technician as the sold by technician. Remember, the sold by field is going to be through the job edit page here again. Next up, we have the flat fee. So it charges a flat fee to the tech off the top of every job. I should specify off the top of every subtotal. So not the total, but the subtotal. Then we have the minimum flat fee. So the minimum dollar on a job that is required for the flat fee to actually kick in. Then we have the percentage fee. So the same as the flat fee, but a percentage instead of a fixed dollar amount. Then we have the minimum percentage fee, the same as the minimum flat fee essentially. And lastly, we have the cost markup. So percentage markup over initial costs of a material. Now, before we move on from the business units, there's actually one other field I want to show you that pertains to payroll, but it's not necessarily in the payroll tab here, and that's going to be in the details page here. What we're going to want to look at is going to be our overtime. So we have two settings. We have standard and we have California. It just depends on where you guys are doing business. So California is going to be anything over 8 hours a day is to be considered overtime, and anything over 12 hours a day is to be considered double overtime. Whereas standard is more on a weekly basis than a daily basis like California. So standard is anything over 40 hours a week is considered overtime, and anything over 48 hours a week is going to be considered double overtime. Next up, what we're going to want to look at is going to be in our invoicing section here. So we're going to cover our services, we're going to cover our materials, and we're going to cover our equipment here. So first up, let's take a look at our services. Clicking in here, and we can just click on any field like. And so now we have a commission tab and not a payroll tab here, right? Because we're dealing with a particular service that's added onto the customer's invoice. Click into the commission tab here. So first up, we have the hours. So this is the sold billable hours for this task. In other words, this can be thought of as an average time it'll take the technician to complete this particular task. Next up, we have the bonus. So this is going to be the flat rate bonus for selling the task. And we also have the percentage bonus for selling this task. Now we have two separate boxes that can be checked off at the bottom here that I'd like to go over. So we have the pays commission. When checked off, this service will be calculating the technician's commission. And then we have the tech-specific bonus. So this goes back to the default adjustment rate we were looking at earlier on the payroll settings of the technician. So this will pay the default adjustment rate bonus configured for the technician, which allows for different percentage bonuses for each technician. So it's specific to that technician. Now, anytime you guys make a save, anytime you guys make any changes, you should always make sure you're clicking save here. So after looking at the services, the next thing we're going to want to look at is going to be our materials here. And there's really only one field that pertains to payroll when looking at materials. And that's going to be the pays commission checkbox. So let's just click into the first one here as an example. And so we just have this checkbox right here. This is all we're going to need to either mark on or off, depending on how you want to categorize this particular material. So you will check this box if the material you have selected should be counted against the technician's commission base, meaning that the cost of this material will be deducted from the overall job along with any purchase orders that are attached. So that's all we're going to worry about as far as materials are concerned here. Next up, we're going to want to look at our equipment. Let's click into our equipment field here under the invoicing section. Just click into the first one. Again, we're going to access the commission tab here. So again, we have the hours, so the expected length of time for this equipment. Up next, we have the flat rate bonus for selling this piece of equipment. And following that, of course, we have the percentage bonus for selling this piece of equipment. Again, we have two boxes that can be checked on or off, depending on how you run your business, similar to the other services that I mentioned earlier. So again, we have the pays commission. We will check this box if the piece of equipment should be counted against the technician's commission base, again, deducted from the cost of the job along with any purchase orders. And then we have the pays tech-specific bonus. This will pay the default adjustment rate bonus configured in the technician's payroll settings, which allows for different percentage bonuses for each individual technician. So now that we've covered a bit about the payroll, I just want to go over some different ways we can set up the timesheets for our technicians. And then we'll go into a little bit of invoicing as well. So let's go on the dispatch board here. Now, if you guys have joined any of the other webinars, I do actually go through this example as well. So we can go ahead and set up a non-job appointment for the technician. So we can either have it as paid, training, or unpaid. Let's say we have a training session here. Service type webinar from 11 to 12 for Adam. Save this information. And of course, it'll populate on dispatch board here. Once it's completed, we can go ahead and just select click complete, save it out. Second thing we can do that kind of tampers with the timesheets is put a technician on a meal, and of course take them off the meal. And lastly, once we click into the icon of the technician, aside from starting and ending a meal, we can edit the non-job timesheets. Let's go ahead and click into this here. So as you can see, we set up a training session here for Adam. We also set up meal time here. So this is just as an example here. So as you can see, it's done simultaneously along with one another, but we can go ahead and certainly edit this information if we'd like. Save that. or we can simply go ahead and delete it. We can also go ahead and add it as well. So we have three options here. So other, meal, and training. And we can go ahead and configure the start and end times, as well as write any memos here. And so these aren't locked. We can always go back in and either delete them or edit them, do whatever we like. Let's go back into the dispatch board here. And let's click on a job here. I just want to show you guys a little bit about the invoicing page. So to access the invoicing page through the job page, of course, we'll just click on the clickable link here for the invoice. There's just a couple things I want to go over. So first thing I want to go over are going to be splits. So splits are used to determine who gets credit and what amount of credit essentially that they get for that particular job. Now this is of course a demo job here. So we only have one technician, David, and he has 100% of the splits here, naturally. Now if there were any other technicians on this job, we can certainly go ahead and give them splits as well. So we can go ahead and adjust the splits here. Say we want to add another technician. Say we want to add Bob, for example. Now what we need to make sure we're doing is whenever we are adding up these splits, that they always need to, of course, add up to 100%. Otherwise, we will be getting an error. So if we put 50 and 49%, click save, we will get a error from Google Chrome as a split must add up to 100% here. So you always want to make sure that those numbers match up accordingly. And so what do the splits affect here? So it also affects the dashboard. So let's take a look at the dashboard here. And I'll go ahead and run a more general filter. Let's say last 30 days, for example. So let's take Adam as an example here. So he has 4.34 jobs. So how is it possible to be dispatched or to have completed that many jobs? So it looks like these are convertible jobs here. So he was actually dispatched to 7.34, completed 7.34, and then he only had 4.34 convertible. So essentially, these decimal points or fractions of a job that are either to be dispatched or completed are all dependent upon the splits that are granted on that job. So as you can see, conveniently enough, the first job here, it's for 34%. So Adam only got 34%. I'm assuming he was possibly one of 3 technicians on this job. So I'm assuming the other 2 possibly got 33%. So let's just double check here. And then we look at the invoice. As you can see, lo and behold, Adam does have 34%, but the following technicians only have 33%. And so that's really where that number comes from on the dispatch board itself, or the dashboard itself, and on the technician's scorecard particularly. It also affects the revenue as well. So it's going to show the split revenue as well as the overall total revenue. In this case, they are the same since this one was only a $0 invoice. Now let's go back into this job here we had for Bob and David. And let's go ahead and add a task. Okay, go ahead and add this, and I believe the job is still in progress here. So we cannot actually batch this out or really do anything as far as the invoicing is concerned. What we need to do is first make sure that we complete out the job, and then we can go ahead and assign a invoice number here, invoice date. We can go ahead and leave as today, and we'll go ahead and save this information. Okay, so the job is now completed. So it does have a timestamp there, of course. Now, really briefly, I just want to cover the different statuses of an invoice. This is very important to understand when you're doing invoicing and trying to review this information on the reporting side, which is what we're going to look at next. So an invoice has three different statuses. So we have pending, we have posted, and we have exported. Now, anything in a pending status is either going to be an invoice which is left unbatched, or an invoice that is batched but not yet posted. So that's going to be everything in the pending status. The second status is going to be a posted status. This means that we've batched the invoice, we've reviewed it, we've determined that it is ready to go over to QuickBooks, and from that point, go ahead and post the invoice, which indicates to whoever is doing the exporting or whoever deals with the QuickBooks side of it, knows for a fact that this batch, this posted batch, is ready to be exported over to your accounting software, to your QuickBooks. And of course, the last status is going to be as an exported status. Now, we can tamper with this information up until the point that it's actually exported. So as of right now, you can see we're still in the pending status. We can still go ahead and make changes if we need to click into the task we just added and edit any of the description, the quantity, the unit price, if there's any equipments associated with it. We can certainly go ahead and do that. Once we post the invoice, one of two things will happen. So the first thing is that we will not be able to actually touch the invoice itself. We will not be able to edit anything on the invoice unless we unpost that selected batch that we previously posted, in which case then we can go back, make the changes we need to, and then again go ahead and post it so we can go ahead and export it. Once we have the invoice as an exported status, so once it's actually within your QuickBooks and it's transferred over, at that point we cannot tamper with the original invoice. Instead, if we need to rectify any information, whether it be a task or some type of an amount or payment or whatever it is, essentially what we're going to need to do in that case is go ahead and add an adjustment invoice. So for example, if you want to rectify some type of payment, you would go ahead and put a negative payment or a negative task, really depending on what you're trying to do. But my point is, anytime an invoice is exported over, we cannot touch the original invoice. Instead, we need to create adjustment invoices to fix anything within our service titan, of course, as well as our accounting software, which in this case is going to be QuickBooks. The second thing that happens once an invoice is in a posted status is that now we can actually view this information on our reporting side. So if we want to view this information on the dashboard, we certainly can, because the dashboard is based off of completed on date. So as long as the job itself has been completed, we can view the information on the dashboard. However, if we look at our payroll detail report, for example, or any accounting report for that matter, one thing I did want to point out is that in the description of every one of our reports, the last sentence of the description itself tells you what the data is based off of. So anytime you guys see this data is based on invoice dates, essentially what that means is not only does the invoice itself need to have an invoice date, so here we have the invoice date, right? But we're not going to be able to actually view this invoice on the accounting reports or the payroll reports for that matter. And so what is the reason for that? It's because it hasn't been posted yet. So anytime you see this data is based on invoice dates, that means the invoices you guys are searching are based off of invoices that have been posted. So let's take a look at the payroll detail report here. As you can see, it says this data is based on invoice dates. Let's go ahead and run this. And let's do it for today's date, because that's when our invoice date is on. And then we can just go ahead and click that as is, run this report. And so we're not going to see any information here for David. So it seems as if there's only one other invoice, but it's not the invoice that we're currently looking at. So let's take a look at what happens when we actually go ahead and post the invoice. So what we need to do first, of course, is batch the invoice. Go ahead and add to batch, 699. So as you can see, the batch has changed here. So we have unbatched status going to a batched status, and it's specifying the batch itself. But if you'll notice, the status of the invoice has not changed. So it's still in a pending status. Again, remember, anything in the pending status is going to be either a batched invoice or an unbatched invoice, but never a posted invoice. So this, again, is a clickable link. We can actually click into this, much like the job link. So we'll click into this here, and this will take us to the invoicing page. We have the batch selected. And then we can go ahead and post the selected batch. Go ahead and do that, that's fine. Okay, let's go back into the job here. Now we can see it's in a posted status, and it is also a batch status as well. So let's go back into the reporting side and see if we can find David for the same date range. So now you can see we have, well, first it seems as if it's the same customer coincidentally, but we originally saw only Alice Campbell's invoice for $100 here. But the one we just went ahead and posted was this one here with invoice number M0001. So as you can see, it reflects all the same information as we saw in the invoice itself, the splits, the total. We didn't really add anything, we just added an empty task. But my point is we won't be able to view this information again unless the invoice itself has been posted. Now, before we move on to the technician timesheet reports as well as the technician activity detail reports, I just very briefly want to go over some options we have as far as the payroll adjustments are concerned. So we can, of course, select the technician, and then we have a few different types we can select from here as well as the posted on date and so on and so forth. So let me just give you a quick breakdown of some of the payroll adjustments we can do here. So we have what's called a direct payroll adjustment. This gives money to or takes money from, if negative amount is entered, of course, from a technician's pay without any offset elsewhere. We also have a commission-based payroll adjustment. This increases or reduces the technician's commissionable base on the invoice, the number that is multiplied by his commission rate to determine his pay. Then we have a labor payroll adjustment. So this is used to pay laborers on a job. Adding this type of payroll adjustment does two things at once. It pays the laborer, but counts his payment as a cost on the invoice itself, which will be deducted from the commissionable base of the technician on the job. Those with non-0% splits, of course. And lastly, we have the advanced payroll adjustment. So used if you are paying a tech in advance before you're even doing payroll for the job. Then once you run the payroll report, this amount will be deducted from the technician's net pay. So now that we've covered payroll adjustments and the payroll report itself, let's take a look at the timesheet reports. Again, this is how we're going to basically pay our technicians on an hourly basis, or pay them on an hourly basis and supplement to a commission basis. So it depends on what you guys have set up. So as far as the filters go for the technician summary report as opposed to the payroll report, we can still select the technician, we can select the business unit, of course we can select the date range. The only difference really is the checkbox that we have, which says include first driving time. When checking off the include first driving time option, the report will run with the initial driving time included for the technician's hours. So if the technician drove to his first job and it took him 10 minutes, he would be getting paid for that essentially. Retrospectively, if the job was not marked off, that would mean that he started work once he got to his first job. I'm sorry, if the box was not checked off, I said job. So let's go ahead and we can just go ahead and select this. That's fine. Go ahead and build a report. I want you guys to take a look at what the report looks like here. So we have the date, of course. It's going to specify it by technician. So we ran all technicians here. It's going to give you the date range you ran it for, the technician, the start time, end time, idle time. Now, idle time is calculated between the time a technician is completes his last job and is dispatched to his following job. So between that time, assuming that there's no meal or training or any other type of offset anywhere else as far as any other timesheets are concerned, that time is going to be considered an idle time. So between when the technician completes his last job and is dispatched to his next job. And of course, we have the driving time, we have the job hours, we have 3 fields here. So we have the meal time, training, and other. And again, these are configured through the non-job timesheets that we can access right off of the dispatch board itself. So again, training, meal, and other. Then we have the worked hours, we have regular hours, and of course, again, we have the overtime and the double overtime. So just to refresh your memory, we have 2 different settings for that. So we have either California or we have standard. If you're doing business in California, the way your overtime is going to work is anything over 8 hours a day is going to be considered overtime, and anything over 12 hours a day is going to be considered double overtime. Whereas standard is going to be anything over 40 hours a week is considered overtime, and anything over 48 hours a week is considered double overtime. So remember, California is more so on a daily basis, whereas standard is more so on a weekly basis. Okay, so this is going to sum up today's payroll webinar. Hopefully you guys were able to learn a little bit more as far as where to go and navigate your way through the system to set up some payroll configurations, as well as the commission for either the services or the materials or the equipment and some of the differences between them. And we were also able to identify the 3 different statuses an invoice can have, as well as what they imply. So what things, what resources we have available to us once an invoice is within a certain status, for example. And lastly, we covered some of the reporting. So we covered the payroll detail report, as well as the technician timesheet summary report. And also we covered a little bit about the payroll adjustments we can go ahead and configure within that specific invoice as well. Again, here is a list of all the webinars that we currently offer.